Ingrid Bergman was not only a beloved actress during the golden Hollywood age, but she was a legend, well respected, adored by fans, and a stunning natural beauty that captivated audiences. So, what went wrong? How did Ingrid Bergman go from being one of the most sought after actresses to being one of the most hated women in America? Today, we will get to the bottom of everything. This is the story of Ingrid Bergman. Before we get started, please do not forget to subscribe and at least flirt with that like button before hitting it. Thanks for watching and enjoy. Ingrid Bergman was born on August 29th of 1915 in Stockholm, Sweden. Her first name Ingrid came from a princess in Sweden by the name of Ingrid. She was born to a Swedish photographer whose name was Justus Samuel Bergman, and a German mother named Frida Henriette August. Sadly, Ingrid originally had two siblings, but they passed away during infancy, leaving Ingrid to grow up as an only child. Tragedy struck again for the family when Ingrid was only a little over 2 years old, when her mother also passed away. Because she was so young, she had little memory of her time with her mother and never got to know her. This left her dad to raise her as a single father. As a child, she was mostly raised in Sweden but would spend her summers in Germany. Since she was little, Ingrid loved dressing up and dancing all around her father's studio. She was destined for the spotlight. Her and her father were extremely close and shared a special bond. Since her father was a photographer, he would often use Ingrid as a protege and photograph her for various projects. Being in front of his lens helped Ingrid become more comfortable with the camera and would ultimately help shape her into a star. Sadly, when Ingrid was only 14 years old, her beloved father, Justus, died of stomach cancer. She experienced a loss and a pain that she never knew existed. Following her father's death, she was then sent to live with her uncle and his wife Hilda. Although it was great that they took Ingrid in, they did already have 5 children of their own to take care of. Ingrid sometimes felt like an outsider and would go to her Aunt Elsa for comfort. Her Aunt Elsa became somewhat of a mother figure to Ingrid, and she would often call her mom. She missed her mother so much she would sometimes wear her mother's old clothing to feel closer to her. It was easy to see, even as a young girl, Ingrid was very intelligent. She ended up learning a total of 5 languages: Swedish, German, English, Italian, and French. From a young age, she had already expressed the desire to become an actress. Ingrid would attend Royal Dramatic Theatre School after receiving a scholarship. Within only several months of her attending, she had already received a part in a play, which was not common in the school. Usually, girls would be expected to train for 3 years before obtaining any role. An exception was made for Ingrid because of her obvious talent. After only a year of her schooling, she was hired by a Swedish film studio and officially began her full-time career. In 1933, Ingrid met a man named Peter Lindström while in Stockholm, Sweden. Peter was an incredibly smart man who earned his medical degree and was now a neurosurgeon. The two really hit it off, and after 6 years of being in a relationship, they decided to get married in 1937. Shortly after their wedding, Ingrid became pregnant with her first child, a little girl whom she named Pia. Although Ingrid was now a mother and took that role very seriously, she was not going to let it stop her from becoming a star. During 1935 to 1938, Ingrid started as an extra, then working her way up to small parts. Soon after, she was placed under a 3-picture contract under UFA, which is a notable German film company. After she was finished, she went back to her homeland to work in Sweden. Within the next few years, she completed a total of 11 Swedish and German films. Ingrid's first introduction to Hollywood was on September 22nd of 1939, when she scored her first role for an English remake of the movie Intermezzo, A Love Story, playing the character Leslie Howard. The problem was that Ingrid was terrified of the role as she spoke very little English. She assumed after this movie she would be sent right back home, and her time in America would be a far distant memory. Luckily, the opposite would happen. Intermezzo was a huge hit, and it put Ingrid into the spotlight. This would instantly lead her to more roles, including Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as Adam Had 4 Sons. Typical to Hollywood, they immediately started picking away at her appearance and made a long list of things they wanted to change about Ingrid going forward. They complained that she was too tall and that her eyebrows were too bushy. They also wanted to change her last name as they were not satisfied with the name Bergman. They also wanted to modify her look by requiring her to wear more heavy makeup. Ingrid was having none of it. Not only did she refuse to change her name, she refused all their attempts at changing her appearance. She already had natural beauty that didn't need to be covered up in layers of heavy makeup. This was something that was unheard of at the time. Usually, actors were desperate to make it and would do anything they were told. She did eventually agree to wear makeup during filming, but it was always very minimal. She also refused to have any cosmetic procedures done. However, she did have her hairline raised to make her forehead appear larger. It is admirable that Ingrid stood her ground. She was keen on not letting Hollywood change who she was. Her next big film, her biggest to date actually, would be released on November 26 of 1942 when Ingrid was 27 years old. She starred in the classic film Casablanca, which still to this day is commonly recognized as one of the greatest films ever made. She shared the big screen alongside actor Humphrey Bogart, playing the role of his former love interest, Lisa. The film was one of Ingrid's most proud moments and kicked her career into overdrive. In the next few years, she would work on one movie after the other, releasing a new movie every year, sometimes more. Some of her notable films were For Whom the Bell Tolls, Gaslight, which earned her an Academy and a Golden Globe for Best Actress, as well as The Bells of St. Mary, Spellbound, Joan of Arc, and Notorious. And although her film list does go on, we are going to stop and take a pause on the year of 1948 because it's during this year that Ingrid's life would suddenly be turned upside down with plenty of twists and turns. What happened next would be considered the scandal of the century. At this time, Ingrid was doing some research into Italian films when a certain director caught her attention. His name was Roberto Rossellini, and Ingrid really liked his work and found him to be a sort of film genius. She was essentially fangirling over his work. She decided to contact Roberto by writing him a letter. In this letter, she reveals she admires his work and proposes the idea to star in one of his films. Roberto, of course, agreed to this. This letter probably came as a bit of a surprise to him because Roberto was still considered an amateur at the time. He hadn't worked with any professional actors or big names, so the fact that Ingrid wanted to work with him was huge. Ingrid packed up her belongings and left the United States, bound for Italy to begin filming. By 1949, Ingrid began on the set for the movie titled Stromboli. During filming, everything was going as expected. That was until rumors started to swirl around about the true nature of Ingrid and Roberto's relationship. People spotted the pair constantly flirting and getting extra up close and personal. Then, a picture of the two holding hands makes its way to the media, and everything from there just exploded. Every newspaper, every magazine was smeared with details of the shocking affair. It was such a large public story that there was no getting away from it. People really saw and viewed Ingrid as this sophisticated, well-rounded woman with good morals. She was considered a top-tier actress and a woman of conviction. So the idea that the Ingrid Bergman would ever involve herself in an adulterous affair just completely threw people off. Things would unfortunately become even worse when more rumors and more details surfaced. Word spread that Ingrid was now pregnant with Roberto's baby. When all of this news of the scandal traveled back to Ingrid's husband in America, he was of course very upset, hurt, and angry. After 13 years of marriage, the pair ended up getting a divorce in 1950. This would be only the beginning of a long and painful custody battle over their daughter Pia. Ingrid, along with Roberto, kept quiet while the media remained very loud. Ingrid's reputation was destroyed. Her film offers, brand deals, and studio connections in the US were now ripped away from her. Although people were rightfully upset, some really took it too far. Ingrid at the time was receiving thousands upon thousands of letters from all over shaming her behavior, calling her obscene names, even threatening her life. Some of the letters stated, and I quote, "You are just a common adulteress, worse than a streetwalker. How can a mother bring such shame on her daughter?" Despite the wave of hate she received, there was a good amount of supporters that showed sympathy to Ingrid. Among some of these supporters were members of Congress as well as Pulitzer Prize winner and screenwriter James Agee, who said, quote, "It's a cruel, embittering ordeal you've had to go through publicly, and I wish you well." He further explained that there were many people, including journalists and/or strangers, that wanted to express the same sympathies, but could not due to their work and how it may be affected. Despite all the scrutiny, Roberto and Ingrid were married on May 24th of 1950. The confusing part of all of this was actors and actresses having affairs at this time was not an uncommon thing at all. So why was this so different? Why was Ingrid persecuted so badly? So much so that she was banned from making movies in America. Yes, that is correct. On March 15th of 1950, Ingrid was officially denounced on the floor of the United States Senate. Ed Sullivan also declined to have her appear on his show. Ingrid Bergman was, in modern-day terms, canceled. The Stromboli film that was now finished was set to come out in theaters and would end up being held up as hundreds of calls were pouring in from religious groups and people requesting that the movie be banned. The movie was released, but it would be a box office flop and would cost $200,000 in losses. Still keeping quiet, Ingrid remained in her apartment for about 2 months before giving birth to her baby. The scandal meant that Ingrid remained in Europe for the next several years. Ingrid and Roberto would become pregnant again, this time with twins, meaning the couple now had 3 children altogether. When Ingrid finally chose to respond to the criticism, she said, quote, "People saw me as a saint. I'm not. I'm just a woman." Fast forward to 1956, Ingrid and Roberto call it quits and officially get divorced. Ingrid had long desired to go back to the United States, but had feared the thought for so long. She didn't know how she would be treated or if she would be accepted, but finally, she decided to rip off the Band-Aid. Ingrid made the brave return to Hollywood, finally facing everything she had been hiding from. By this time, the dust had settled, and after multiple years, many began to forgive Ingrid's actions. While I do not condone cheating and agree that it is very wrong, I do not believe the extreme way in which Ingrid was treated was fair or warranted, including when you think of all the men or people in general who had affairs in Hollywood and no one even cared to bat an eye. I believe things did get out of hand. With her head held high, Ingrid is now back in the United States to begin filming for the movie Anastasia, where she plays a lost Polish princess. The film was highly praised, as was her work, and she would win her 2nd Academy Award for Best Actress. Although she was not present at the ceremony, actor Cary Grant would accept on her behalf, stating, quote, "Dear Ingrid, if you can hear me now, or if you see this televised film, I want you to know that every one of us here tonight send you love, our admiration, our congratulations, and every affectionate thought." This was a big deal for Ingrid, to have someone highly respected like Cary Grant show acceptance to her publicly. It was the affirmation she needed, including in front of all of her peers. Cary Grant's support did not stop there. In 1958, he would co-star alongside Ingrid in the film Indiscreet. The following year, in 1959, Ingrid was invited to present at the Academy Awards, where she would announce the award for Best Picture. This would be Ingrid's very first public appearance following her big affair. It was understandable why Ingrid was scared to do this, as she didn't know what to expect. The best outcome happened because when Ingrid went on stage, everyone in the audience got to their feet and gave Ingrid a standing ovation. Ingrid was back on the top and finally got the acceptance she longed for. Following this, Ingrid took an interest in television, appearing in multiple shows and series. Although TV took up the majority of her career, she still did dabble in films. On August 28th of 1982 in Chelsea, London, Ingrid Bergman died at 87 years old, just shy of her 88th birthday. It is very crazy how her story unfolded and why people, especially Americans, chose to treat her so badly. I think people really looked at Ingrid as a refined, sophisticated woman that could do no wrong, but at the end of the day, celebrities are just regular human beings and they make mistakes in life just like we do. Ingrid Bergman was an amazing and beautiful woman who also made mistakes but did not deserve to be treated in the way she was. At the very least, I'm glad that everyone was able to forgive, forget, and move on. That is going to be it for me today. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.